Okay, welcome back to Developers Let's Play of Defender's Quest. I'm Lars Doucet, lead developer and do-stuffer, and...
I'm still James Cavan, I'm still the writer, and I'm still sick.
And we're gonna play Defender's Quest and talk all over the action, telling you all of the design decisions and stuff. Okay, so we're done with tutorial battles now, and this is the first time where we see the difficulty selector. So I want to talk a little bit about this, because it's a very specifically designed system. The kind of thing I've always liked about RPGs is the fact that if you get stuck, you can go back and fight some battles and get stronger and keep going forward. I mean, we call this grinding, and it has a bad reputation that it deserves. Let's be clear about that. But what's interesting about it is that it's kind of elegant and crude at the same time. It basically provides a kind of safety valve that if nothing else, there's a way to keep going forward on the game. And I think that's very important to make the game accessible to a large amount of people. So when I was 8 years old, like, the only game I ever beat was the original Final Fantasy. Like, I couldn't beat, like, Contra or even Mario. But Final Fantasy is just like, if you play this for 70 hours, you will probably beat it. Because you could just get more powerful. And so, obviously, you don't just want to have everything revolve around that. But so that's why we have these multiple challenges. And one of the things we try to signal to the player is, you should not try this the first time through. These are there, they have unique designs, and so that you see here the monsters change, and they have unique rewards. You should do this for when you've beaten a couple battles, you can come back and get better stuff. And most people seem to get this, and once they figure it out, it's a good system, and it seems to be pretty compelling and addictive. But at the same time, it lets you squeak by if you don't care about having a ridiculous challenge. Like, I could just play this on casual, let tons of monsters leap by and hit Azra, and just cheeseburger my way through the game. And I'll just see the story, and if that's all I want, that's fine. You know, or I can play normal and go back and play extreme as soon as I'm able to beat it. And then I can get, like, the most extreme, like, hardcore challenge possible. And that, like, makes the game could last anywhere from 5 hours on, like, super cheeseburger mode to, like, 60 hours on super elite mode. And so far it's worked out really well for us. And if you're a super nerd, you know, or even if you're just, like, a regular nerd, we have accessibility settings. We give you an achievement, basically, to incentivize you to go check out this screen, where you can actually set the rewards yourself. At first I wasn't sure if this was a good idea, but it turns out it's one of the most popular features of the game. Like, if you disagree with the way we balance the game, you can change it. So for instance, right now you get 50% less stuff if you fail a mission. And for characters who aren't in battle when it ends, they get 50% less stuff. Let's change that to none right now, because I don't feel like grinding up people I didn't summon. I mean, even I use that. And then here, you can increase XP gain to like 300%. And at first I was like, wow, is that going to be really terrible? But it turns out that it works really well because, like, hardcore people are like, I am honor-bound, not to cheat.
I'm going to bump it down to 50% just because.
Because it should take 120 hours for the true NES experience. And and then I found that people who need this stuff, who don't have a lot of time, like adults, like people who are 30 years old, like I'll be in a couple months, you know, like who have jobs and don't have time for games, like this basically, you get pretty much the same experience, but you get through it faster. So I'm going to stick with 100%, and I'm going to stick with that, and we are going to start this battle on normal, which is what's intended. And this tells you a little bit about the enemies, so you can see them and see like what kind of stuff you're about to see. And you get a different reward for just squeaking by than you get for beating it on perfect. So if you just beat the normal one and squeak by, you get the privilege of continuing. But if you like get just a pass on a higher level, you get like extra stuff. And these are like one-time rewards. So what's interesting about our reward system is because you get these one-time rewards for getting perfects and beating higher level difficulties, it encourages you, rather than to play the same level over and over again, it's better to go back and beat challenges you haven't beaten, because the one-time rewards are generally like nice big hits that are bigger than just the gradual rewards you get for just grinding monsters. So the idea is, yes, we have grinding in the game, but it's designed, hey, when it's time to grind and you feel that you need to get by this, you need more power to get by this challenge, and like our balance wasn't perfect so that you weren't naturally good enough, and so we have to rely on the safety valve, instead of just doing something boring, go back and try a new mission. something you haven't seen yet. So there's always new content, even in the quote-unquote grindy part of our game. And at least that's the intent. And then this cutscene, here's where we introduce our new character. And I love this background by character. It's super great. This is where Keta, the Nomad, is introduced. And is there anything you want to say about this scene?
Fairly straightforward. We needed to establish the threat here without having Azra narrate to herself everything that's happening, which is something that drives me crazy.
Right. And then so that's our cutscene is basically designed for two people to banter back and forth. Like almost all our writing is done that way. And that's just kind of how it is.
Unfortunately, that line right there, one previous, has apparently convinced everyone overseas that Azra is a princess. It's like English is their second language. They're reading this, more literally than I intended.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we didn't want Azra to be a princess because, you're already defending her. We didn't want it to be a defend the princess game, but yeah. So we have like people in Romania and Korea who are like, oh, she's a princess. She has a purple dress. That makes sense. Also, the go down swinging line. It's confused some people because Keta has a bow. She's gonna swing the bow at people.
I did not even think about that.
Yeah, so we'll have to be careful about that. Anyway, so we introduce Keta. And let's get started. So this is when you get your ranged unit. So Rangers are kind of like the most versatile characters you have in the game. Another important thing about this story is that it's repeating the same scene with Slack. You get a new friend, you bring them into the halfway world, you show people. So we're repeating the mechanics of the halfway world and introducing people to it so that the player slowly reinforces what's going on. And so you see that they've got this little ghostly thing here. The idea is that when they're in this kind of mode, they're kind of in Azra's head. They're still in the real world, but she can detect their presence. And she's going to bring them into the halfway world. And so it's actually designed so it detects whether the character is currently summoned or not before it draws their picture. And then it chooses to draw either the ghost version or the normal version of them, based on whether they're on the field. So if I had really quickly put Slack on the field, he would show up solid in this thing. And that basically saved me a lot of time in having to put those triggers into the cutscenes themselves. It just auto-checks. And we keep reinforcing the whole halfway concept. And so here you now have two menus you can pick between. You can see they cost different amounts of PSI. And Rangers, generally, we've had the problem with Rangers is we've consistently been nerfing them since the original version of the game.
Yep.
We have almost never made them more powerful. We've just made them less powerful at every stage of the game. And at least in the regular, normal game mode, they're still basically the most powerful bang for buck unit. And so one thing that was actually kind of hilarious, there was a Let's Play someone did, pretty popular one, where the Let's Player didn't realize that Rangers have a minimum range for 4 videos.
Oh, wow.
They figured it out eventually. I feel kind of bad about not pointing that out, but basically you see this donut here. Keta can only shoot guys that are in the outer range of that. And that minimum range is basically designed to keep Rangers from just killing everything, so that they can only hit things at distance. This pretty much discourages you from ever putting them on the front lines, because that only exposes them to damage. But this is obviously the best spot for her, and I'll boost her up to triple shot, so she can cover a lot of stuff. For Slack, I would put him right here. And this is actually a good place where I can start showing some advanced tactics. So one thing is if you want to maximize your DPS, you want to take your Rangers and put them on target strongest. And what this is going to do is that she's going to attack the enemies with the most hit points in range, which means she's going to avoid sending a 10-point damage arrow to an enemy with 1 hit point left, so that you waste 9 hit points of damage. So that she spreads the damage out and doesn't overkill, so you get the most damage going through. However, this makes it so that she never focuses on actually killing anything. So although you'll be maximizing your damage, enemies might actually leak through if you do that. So you have to have some support and someone to finish them off. On this battle, it's probably not going to matter because between the two of them, they're probably going to kill everything. But that's the kind of thing that becomes a big deal later. Oh, and also I should note here that on the various game speeds, when you change the game speed, it just changes the game's time step. But the exception is for 4x speed, because the game was not able to be deterministic at quadruple time step, which means that you would get different results at 4x speed than at 2x. So at 4x speed, it runs at 2x, but it does 2 updates per frame, which is why 4x is not a good thing to use if you're worried about performance issues.
Well, it looks like we might have to swap Keta over to goaltending here.
Right, so here, enemies are starting to leak through because she's not focusing on killing stuff. And so we can have her focus on goaltending by targeting weakest or first. First just hits the first one there, and weakest means that she will focus on things that have already been softened up a bit. I'll put her on first. And then you'll notice these guys are attacking Slack. These guys have an attack ability. And Slack, of course, like Wolverine, has freakishly high regeneration. And that'll start diverging a lot more from, say, Keta's regeneration stat over the levels. And that's because Berserkers can't wear armor. And because they can't wear armor, but they're still a frontline troop, they need some way to be able to not die. And then Rangers, mostly, they can equip some light armor later on, but you keep them basically off of the front lines, and that's how you mostly deal with that. I'm going to overdo Slack here.
Our light armor, heavy armor dichotomy is something my brother still gives me crap for.
Yeah, basically we started with... This game, basically, we limited ourselves to play it pretty close to standard RPG tropes, and trying to infuse it with a little bit more credibility where we could. But, like, yeah, Nathaniel's brother basically says, like, in real life, go for it, James.
There is no such thing as light armor. Everybody wears the same stuff, it's just how much you wear of it. So you are not a light armor guy, you are a lightly armored guy.
Right, well, we'll go into that when we get to a shop and see some armor, and we'll talk about all that grumbleness and how we ultimately kind of sort of care. Now, James, is this character a self-portrait? Because he bears a striking resemblance to you.
It was not intended to be, although I do have to say one of my life goals is to lose an eye with a scar going through it just so that I can wear an eye patch.
Now your nose is not nearly quite as broken and refused as that dude's.
Give it time.
But yeah, just the goatee and the hair and the tallness and the lankiness. Anyway, so we have the lackey. And so here we're repeating the sense that, you know, nobody's ever killed a Revenant. And just kind of like explaining the significance of Azra and what it means.
I would like to point out for the people like my brother out there, that's actually a hunting spear he's using. It's a boar spear. So the idea being that you have people repurposing all sorts of things in this world because they don't have a massive supply of nice stuff from the outside world.
Right, and here we have Ozumal's, you know, basically going to make the most of this situation, where he's basically going to sell Azra into slavery. And one thing I kind of like about Ozumal's character is that he is the lord of a plague colony. And so he's this big fish in a small pond, and so he's basically got like the equivalent of like a cast-off noble person's bathrobe that's dirty and patched, and he's found someone's pipe and like an earring, and that's like high-class luxury clothing in this world.
Bling bling.
And so like we kind of wanted to underscore the patheticness of him, in contrast to the rest of the stuff. And so this is the first town. It's actually a prison. We'll probably go into the town and then maybe the next battle, because this episode seems to be going a little faster. But this is the first town you actually go to, and it's actually a prison. And here, you know, we're slowly explaining some things about the, you know, mechanics. The characters don't quite understand it. When Bacall comes into the picture, he'll explain more later. And this is actually where we first see Bacall, the mysterious stranger.
Who basically serves as our walking fount of exposition,
Yeah.
as needed.
Yeah, he's essentially the Gandalf / Dumbledore of the story. You know, down to the gray hair and kind of priestly vestments kind of thing. Anyway, so he's gonna bust Azra out of here and introduces the fact that the men in red, he kind of sets us up for Act 2. And he's basically there to explain things later on. And so he gives us a little dose of scrap to bribe help from our prisoners. And so this is where we kind of give you some more scrap, and then the little flavor text kind of like drives home that this is what people use to trade with. just a quick tutorial about stuff. And some people don't know that you should probably hire berserkers, but you can do that from here. One thing is, actually, we should probably talk about hero mode right now, because there's an achievement for beating the game without any generic recruits. I didn't realize how insane some people are achievements, so some people see that achievement and will refuse to hire anyone on their first playthrough. And frankly, that's insane. Like, I should have made it just a separate, discrete game mode that you can opt into, and that it's like, maybe even not even unlockable till you've beaten the game once. Because the whole point of hero mode is, it's a self-imposed challenge that some guys on our forums created in the alpha version, where you basically don't hire any generic units, and you only use your heroes. And it's actually quite fun, and it requires you to use like a lot of really like deeper mechanics, because you can't cheeseburger as much as you can with generic units. But we don't recommend that anyone do that on their first playthrough. Like,
yeah, absolutely not.
Like the game's way more fun if you just get some recruits and then do hero mode after you've beaten the game at least once. But
we've got all of our little customization here. One thing that I think is really cool that I doubt anyone has noticed is when you randomize these troops by just clicking the class over and over again, it picks very specific traits based off the name. So we have name banks that are from each of our civilizations in the game.
Ash, Nomad, and Quaid are three. It is Quaid, right?
Yeah.
Are three civilizations. So this is a Quaid name, and this is Quaid complexion. So the Ash characters, basically, they're kind of this big, sprawling kind of like kingdom that became an empire. So there's the most racial diversity in that one. The Quaid are very pale and have white or black hair. And the Nomads have brown or black hair and slightly darker skin, usually more red skin and green eyes or brown eyes. And so here, this is a Quaid person. Is this a Nomad?
That's a Nomad, yeah, Cask.
That's a Nomad. That's Quaid. That's Quaid.
He's Ash.
Yeah, he's Ash.
We actually have, there's a big document I have somewhere that actually lists like the language characteristics. So it's like, these sounds exist in this language, not in this one.
Right.
So generally the Ash stuff is all very Greek or Arab sounding, and
yeah, this is Ash. Is this Ash or Nomad?
That's Nomad.
Yeah, that's Quaid.
This Quaid stuff is all based off
Nomad.
Old English, Welsh, and Hawaiian. I was going for stuff that had a bajillion vowels and some more exotic sounds than the rest of the languages.
Is this guy Ash or Nomad?
Nomad, I think.
The red hair is the giveaway. Yeah, this guy's Ash.
Yeah.
Because like your darker skinned people are only from the Ash Kingdom, so because there's a larger range of diversity there. And I thought that was kind of cool because I didn't want to have characters and like races and stuff that are just like, these are the Vikings.
Yeah, that's something that's always
I say that as
me.
a Viking.
But something that's always bothered me in fantasy games where they just have fantasy analogs for real-world civilizations, especially when they don't fit with each other at all. So it's like, oh, I'm going to walk over from this Viking village and then chill with the Roman Empire a little bit. Yeah. Maybe I'll hang with the pirates after that.
Yeah, and then you know, we're gonna go you know, Qing Dynasty Chinese people are gonna go hang with some samurai.
Yeah, I just feel like if you're doing that, you're failing to provide the most fundamental purpose of a fantasy story, which is to take me on a journey to a fantastical world. It's like, if it's all stuff I already know, it's not interesting.
Cool. Well, let's get... I like Kared here. He looks interesting. Let's give him some pants that we can distinguish him with. Let's give him purple pants. Cool. He's joined the party. And each recruit costs more. Oh, Kezamon, you are so beautiful. How can you say no to a guy like that?
Definitely the Hulk Hogan of the party.
Yeah, it costs slightly more. I mean, you'll eventually be able to afford everything. But so there's this kind of dynamic here between do you want a large party that is basically poorly equipped, or a small party that is super equipped? That's one of the things about hero mode, is that you have plenty of money to give everyone the best stuff. But then you can't cover as much of the map. And so here's our equipment system. And so here, basically, I wanted to avoid the kind of thing, and this is basically from James and Nathaniel kind of thing, is where the weapons progression is essentially like a microcosm of just like technological evolution. You start with like, or stuff that's like never existed in the first place. Like, did anyone ever really make copper swords? I think we just went from stone to bronze. But you have people like tin sword, copper sword, bronze sword. It's like, this isn't the Olympics of swords.
Bronze takes more work to create than iron because you're smelting 2 ores together. So there is no reason at all that a bronze sword would be cheaper than an iron sword.
It'd be like in a game like Shadowrun or whatever, like some steampunk setting where it's like, okay, I'm just starting out. All I can afford is a transistor radio.
Or
now I'm going to get my Commodore 64. If I had more money, I could buy a Dell laptop. But instead, I'm going to get an NES to hack into the Matrix. It's like, no, like...
Someday I want to make a modern setting for an RPG. So that you go out, in your backyard and find a flintlock musket, and that's your starter weapon. Maybe when you get a little more money, you can scrap together and buy something like a Civil War revolver.
And then by the time you're, facing the creators of the universe at the end battle, you've got like an AR-15 that you made on your 3D printer. There's /sarcasm there, by the way, if it wasn't obvious. But anyway, so you need to start with low-grade stuff, but we need a plausible reason for it. So, our plausible reason is you're in a pit and you don't have access to any good stuff. So, all of your initial weapons are all like super crap. So, you're in a prison, what are you gonna buy? You're gonna buy a shiv that someone made. And you have your choice of metal or stone. Like, basically laced to, a flimsy piece of wood. So, Slat gets the best stuff, and then these guys will have to deal with the dregs. And one thing about having a party system here is that, later, when you recruit more units and you get better stuff, because you've got a large party, you can actually, like, give them your hand-me-down weapons. So it's not like those RPGs where only one person can equip something. So there's actually, like, weapons have a longevity beyond just how long you happen to have them on your main guy. So there's a little bit more of an investment there. And then, should we start the next battle?
Let's do it.
And cool. We introduce a couple new enemy types here. We'll get into them soon. Oh, and so here's your first battle where you can get something like truly awesome. But that's super out of reach.
We introduce the man in red.
Indeed. And here is where he name drops the Quaid Empire for the first time. Because we don't care about it, it's not important yet, but it exists.
Something about our names. Let's see, the Ash Kingdom. I was really lazy with these. I was taking an Old English class at the time. Ash is just the first letter of the Old English alphabet. And then instead of going with the Bee Kingdom, I think I had a news article up or something. There's something on the side talking about Dennis Quaid. And I was like, I like it, it's in the game. So that's where the Quaid Empire came from.
Wow, I was actually wondering if it was as simple as that. I thought it was like some Welsh, like, fairy god or something.
Nope, nothing that interesting.
Cool. Right, and here's obviously we established that Ash and Quaid are at war, but we phrase it in a way that's relevant to what you care about. As you know, Bob, the Ash and Quaid Kingdom are at war, and the audience doesn't care.
Anytime a character says, as you know, they should just turn to the screen and talk directly to the audience, because that's all they're doing.
Right, so we phrase it here in a way that's relevant. We talk about how it's relevant to the play. And, are we consistent with the adjectives about describing the Ash Kingdom? Do we use Ashani?
I think so. I think we had Ashite for a while, which we scrapped for obvious reasons. It was one of those that looks okay on paper, and then you say it out loud and go, oh. Yeah. All right, Control F, find everywhere we used that and get it out now.
Yeah, Ashish is also not good. Ashian. Right, and so here, basically, Ozumal's modus operandi is, although no one can kill the Revenant, some people are able to muster enough manpower to basically just like chain them up like attack dogs.
Yeah, like lasso it, tie it down, and then you can use it for whatever you want.
Right, and that's kind of how Ozumal, builds his Empire of Terror. And I believe the TV tropes page for Defender's Quest lists Zelamir's role as the man behind the man.
Yes.
And you can see here kind of like Ozumal's basically sucking up to this guy who, obviously is more powerful than him. But Ozumal likes to think that he's really the man in charge. And as we'll see, Zelamir is having nothing of that, but we'll let Ozumal believe whatever he needs, too.
Yep.
And here we explain what the battle system looks like to people who aren't participating in it. How basically, like, everyone seems to fade away and then all the monsters die. Because that's what happens when you go to the halfway world. And then Zelamir, who seems like he knows something about this, is like, oh, well, I've got to check this out. And here we have our first battle in the Coliseum. And this is pretty much the last of the tutorials. So we're like, hey, just so you know, if you have more guys, they'll show up here. And you should use Slack because he's got double hit. Because we just started him with that. And these guys are level 1 and they don't have any additional abilities yet. So boosting them to level 2 makes them stronger, but it doesn't unlock a new ability. So they're not as valuable as Slack yet. People complained about this later, that if you don't recruit people for a while, it takes forever to level them up. So that's why we never included a feature to like spend scrap to level them up, but we probably should have. But anyway, if you have that problem, just turn off the absence penalty and crank XP gain to 300% and you should be fine. But anyway, so for this first battle, I like to put Slack here and boost him. And then these guys right here. This is the first battle where there's actually like a chance you'll screw up, even if you kind of know what you're doing. So I don't have enough to boost Keta out of the gate. I'll need to get a little more stuff. You can click here to send them immediately. And I'm going to have her focus on maximizing damage, and this first guy's going to focus on maximizing damage. And this guy's going to be set on first. Slack, for now, is going to be set on this, but I'll change him to goaltending when I need to. Because Slack and Keta are the most likely to overkill an enemy. And this is just enough to kill everything, which means I'm not wasting any damage. But as you can see, they're slowly gaining on me, so I might need a little help from Slack.
You can pump Keta up now, which should help significantly.
Right, and so I've got them both on target strong so that they won't waste any attacks they don't have to.
That's especially important when you have Keta firing the spread shots.
Right.
There's nothing worse than having the spread shot hit one guy by himself, and then like 4 of the arrows just veer off the edge of the map. It's like, oh, why? So
right. So
you're firing into clumps.
Yeah, targeting strong always makes it more likely she'll hit a group of guys. I'm going to have her target fast so that she will selectively single out those little worms because sometimes they can run past, especially if you've got a group of enemies like spawned on top of them. It wasn't a problem here, we did pretty well. And here it's fast just means first because everything's the same speed, so I'll take her back to this. These little advanced options here we don't really need to go into right now, but those become really important in New Game Plus, but right now they're pretty much irrelevant. You can also save your current targeting settings if you want by clicking that button, so that if I start a new battle and summon her, she'll have that targeting thing right from the start. I should go ahead and boost this guy here. It doesn't give him a new ability, but just
ups his base damage.
Right, and here we have a new type of enemy. And we have a little Magic the Gathering style flavor text here. I actually wrote all this stuff, and then had James vet it and fix it for me to match the setting. But these guys are slow and they have tons of hit points. And what we generally tried to do was make it so that every enemy archetype visually, like, told you something about the monster. So, and we're consistent with that in most places except for worms. Like, worms usually mean fast, except for when they're slow.
Yep.
But, and now all of our defenders have gained levels.
Dun, dun, dun.
And here we have our skill trees. And this is kind of what's unique to Defender's Quest. And basically, you have the distinctions between active and passive skills, which you have in tower defense games, but usually they have it that all of your towers of one type all get upgraded at once. Whereas here, each dude's individual. So, for instance, I could make it so that I put my point in Slash, so that Slack is really powerful right out of the gate. If I put a point here, yeah, that's going to be a better attack and do more damage overall, but I have to boost him first. So there's a little tactical thing here. And then this is a passive ability. It increases his speed, and what's going to be good about that is that that makes all of his attacks cool down faster. And that's always on regardless of what his boost level is. For these guys, basically early on, the best bang for your buck is just to unlock the next attack. And you can see here what stuff he's going to get. So everyone has a pretty simple skill tree, but there's still a lot of customization you can do within it based on where you put your points and what skills you unlock. You generally want to unlock every skill, but where you put your points is what matters.
I always have at least one Berserker that just has maxed out double hit, because it's just incredibly handy to be able to plunk someone down for dirt cheap and have them actually start dishing out damage.
Right, exactly. Especially late game. You can redesign your characters here at any time if you want to. For main characters, you can only rename them. You can't change their sprite because they actually have custom sprites.
And it would, if you could do that, it would lead to a huge dichotomy between cutscenes and in battle.
Right, because we don't have a way to recolor them in battle, and
Or in cutscene.
In cutscenes. We can do it in battles.
Which is also sadly why we can't have any generics in cutscenes, because there would be no way to create art at the level of detail we have for our cutscenes that could still swap colors on the fly.
Well, we could do it. We just never did. Like, we could do that in Defender's Quest 2. Oh, did I just say that? Sure if we were supposed to announce that yet. Cool. Alrighty, so Zelimir understands what's going on here, and that's why he's interested in Azra. And then, of course, something happens.
Our wonderful screen shake effect, which I used all over the place as soon as that was programmed.
Yeah,
beautiful.
That's built into the Flixel engine, so I was just like, yes, screen shake. And we use like the same crappy explosion sound effect.
Yep.
Like, most of our sound effects are actually done by like a good sound effects guy, Zach Striefel, Symphony of Spectres. We didn't commission him for many of them, but he did the ones. But that explosion, I think I got off some like sound effects CD. So it's not particularly great. And we use it all the time for like...
everything.
Anytime something needs to go boom. Okay, cool. I think that'll be a good stopping point before we go on to the next one.
Sounds good to me.
Thanks for watching.